Hi counselors, thanks for joining me for another video from Counselor Tips. In this video, I'm going to be covering a crisis case note. You use what's most comfortable to you or what's congruent with your agency that you work for. Nonetheless, a crisis intervention case note is very detailed and brief and right to the point of demonstrating how the client has presented with their crisis of concern, what you did as a counselor to support the client through the crisis, what assessments you used to ensure that the client was stable enough to let them leave the office, or to support if you've had to have the client have additional outside support because of serious instability, as well as what is the follow-up or plan. In the example I'm providing in this video, I am using a DAP note. In the data section, you're writing a brief description of what the client shared or reported, as well as what you've observed in the session. In this area, you can include personal history along with the observations. Remember, you're documenting facts without bias. As you see in the data section here, I'm reporting that the client returned to counseling and also reported that they had thoughts of suicide. The client reported having a plan, including a place and time, as well as having means and intent. This client would be considered at an increased risk. In the data section, I'm also documenting that I sought outside assistance for this client by calling the police in order for the police to remove the gun from the client's car. The client and counselor worked together to identify the client's supports and made a crisis plan. In this plan, the counselor included the suicide hotline number, a mobile crisis unit phone number, and any suicide support groups in the client's community. Together, the client and counselor developed a safety plan, as well as the client's supports were contacted and arrived at the counseling office to provide transportation to the local emergency room. The counselor also provided a referral to a psychiatrist for a psychiatric evaluation and an evaluation for medication assistance. In the assessment section, the counselor here will be documenting a summary of what happened from the data section. In this section as well, I'm providing a diagnosis and a differential diagnosis, along with the assessment instrument I used and the results of those assessment instruments. Remember to remain objective in your statements. In the assessment section, I've documented what I observed in the client's affect and behavior. I have also documented, because the client reported feeling suicidal and having an active plan and means, that I decided to assess the client using the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. After using the scale, I put down the results of the assessment, which was that the client was at a high risk for suicidal action. Lastly, in my crisis case note, I am documenting in the plan section. In this section, you as the counselor will be documenting what you and the client have agreed upon in order for the client to address his stability or anything that he needs to do between sessions. In this section, you're going to include any homework to link sessions together, any referrals, and the date and time of the next scheduled session. I've documented here that the client will save the names and phone numbers of his supports and will post the phone numbers in his home as well. I've documented that his family members are going to provide support and monitoring of the client's needs and safety. I've noted that the client will be attending a psychiatric appointment with the doctor as we scheduled, and that the client will return to counseling on a specific date. I have noted that the client has agreed to follow the safety plan and crisis treatment plan that was developed for him, and that the client will go to the local ER if there are early signs of suicidal ideation. A crisis case note can really be very simple and easy. Keep the focus on the crisis at hand. If you're enjoying these videos, please consider subscribing to Counselor Tips. If you believe that you know a counselor that could benefit from these videos, consider passing it on. See you soon.